Today, we're diving into a full-blown crisis inside the European Union's power structure, a stunning betrayal that nobody saw coming. We'll explore how corruption has infiltrated one of Europe's most important capitals, examine why a major European leader is facing unprecedented public fury, and reveal the escalating battle between Washington and Brussels that just reached a breaking point. Plus, why a top American banking executive is calling Europe weak, what's really happening with migration quotas that nobody wants to talk about, and a protest in London that targeted the crown jewels themselves. And trust me, I've saved the most interesting part for the very end of this episode. I spent years working inside one of the biggest, most respected media organizations you can imagine. I saw how narratives got shaped, how stories got twisted to fit what the higher-ups wanted you to believe, how inconvenient facts just disappeared. I walked away from that world because I couldn't do it anymore. Now I work independently, I answer to no one but you, and I tell you what actually matters. And listen, what we're covering today matters enormously. I need you to hit that like button, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because we're doing something different here. We fact-check everything, we verify sources, we work incredibly hard to avoid spreading misinformation in an era where fake news is everywhere. If you appreciate that kind of dedication, consider sponsoring this channel. It means the world to me, and it keeps this operation running without corporate interference. And please, watch until the very end, because what I'm holding back is going to surprise you. So let's start with something that should shock anyone paying attention to European politics. The European Greens, the very people who've been pushing climate policy for decades, just declared Ursula von der Leyen and Manfred Weber enemy number one. You heard that right. During the second day of the European Greens Congress in Lisbon, they stood up and announced that the European People's Party, the party of von der Leyen and Weber, is now their primary adversary. Why would they do this? Because after the pandemic and after the war in Ukraine started, the climate agenda got pushed to the back burner. Economic priorities shifted, and the Greens are furious about it. But here's where it gets interesting. Von der Leyen has been one of the most aggressive champions of the Green Deal, pushing environmental regulations that have systematically undermined the competitiveness of European industries. Germany's been sliding toward deindustrialization, partly because of these policies, and now the Greens are saying it's not enough. They want more. But wait, there's another accusation flying around. The European People's Party is also being attacked for, and I'm quoting here, crossing red lines by engaging with right-wing parties. So let me get this straight. You're not green enough, and you're also talking to the wrong people. The political knives are out in Brussels, and this could mean new votes of no confidence, new internal battles. This is European politics eating itself alive, and we're watching it happen in real time. And speaking of Brussels eating itself, let's talk about what's happening Monday. EU interior ministers are facing what's being described as a very difficult day. They're going to discuss something called the Solidarity Pool, which is basically a plan to distribute asylum seekers across all EU member states next year. The European Commission wants to redistribute people arriving in Spain, Italy, Greece, and Cyprus, the countries they claim are receiving the most migrants. Here's the deal they're proposing. Every EU country, no exceptions, must either accept a portion of these people or pay compensation to the countries that do accept them. Sounds simple, right? Except there's a massive problem. Governments in Poland, Hungary, and others are saying absolutely not. They don't want to take more people, and they don't want to pay money to avoid taking them. They're going to fight this tooth and nail. What we're really talking about here is how to divide the burden. Who takes the people, who pays for others to take them. And because there's a serious split inside the EU on this issue, because consensus is impossible, this meeting on Monday could blow up spectacularly. So we're watching closely to see what they announce, because whatever comes out of that room is going to tell us a lot about whether the EU can actually function on the issues that matter most to ordinary Europeans. But if you think that's bad, wait until you hear what's happening with law enforcement in Belgium. Belgium, along with the Netherlands, is now considered one of the key centers for producing synthetic illegal substances in Europe. The chemical components for these operations are coming primarily from China and India. That's the supply chain right there. Recent legal investigations have uncovered something deeply troubling. Criminal organizations have successfully penetrated the country's legal system, including the police and judicial authorities. This isn't just about crime on the streets. This is about corruption at the institutional level. And according to Europol, corruption is the main problem in fighting organized crime across Europe. Let me say that again. Corruption is the main problem. Europol explains it like this. Enormous financial resources are circulating in the criminal world. Because of this money, criminals are able to involve officials and law enforcement in their illegal activities. If European countries don't actively counteract this criminal business model, there's a serious risk that Belgium, including Brussels, could turn into a state associated with the trade and production of prohibited substances. This would threaten not only internal security, but the stability of the entire European Union. Think about that for a moment. Brussels is the capital of the European Union. It's where all the major decisions get made. And now we're being told that criminal infiltration is so deep that the entire city, the entire country, could become synonymous with illegal substance production. European media is openly raising this issue, so now we're waiting to see what measures they'll actually take. Because if they don't act, this could spiral completely out of control. Now let's shift to Germany, because voters there have never been so disappointed with Friedrich Merz's government. A brand new poll from the INSA Sociological Institute, prepared specifically for the globally renowned German publication Bild, shows that dissatisfaction with the ruling coalition under Merz has reached a historic maximum. 70% of respondents said they do not support the current government's course. But here's what's even more striking. Dissatisfaction is growing even among his own supporters. According to INSA, Merz is only supported by 52% of voters from his own CDU-CSU alliance and just 35% of Social Democratic Party supporters. These are catastrophic numbers. When your own base is abandoning you, you're in serious trouble. And it gets worse. German police have recorded an incredible increase in cases of politicians being insulted. The number of registered cases of verbal attacks on German political figures has exceeded the levels from 2 years ago. Even though the criminal code protects German politicians from attacks on their reputation, and violations are punishable by fines or imprisonment for up to 5 years, people apparently aren't being deterred by the threat of severe punishment. Convictions for insulting politicians have tripled. More and more people just aren't holding back their emotions and are openly expressing their opinions in unacceptable forms. What does this tell us? It tells us that the social contract between the German government and the German people is breaking down. When citizens are so frustrated that they're willing to risk criminal penalties just to vent their anger, that's a society under enormous strain. And Friedrich Merz is at the center of this storm. But Merz has been busy on the international stage. During his official visit to Israel, he made his political disagreements clear while also confirming Germany's reliable support. Merz distanced himself from Israel's military operation in Gaza and advocated for changing Israel's policy toward a two-state solution. The Chancellor of Germany met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and Merz made a point of stating that Germany must defend the existence and security of Israel. In the presidential office guestbook in Jerusalem, Merz wrote that the friendship between Germany and Israel is a great treasure. Netanyahu, in turn, declared that the fates of Israel and Germany are intertwined. He said, and I'm quoting, "We experienced the greatest tragedy that any people have ever experienced on German soil, and it was committed by Germans." That's a heavy statement, and Netanyahu wasn't pulling any punches. Merz and Netanyahu also held an expanded meeting with Israeli ministers and high-ranking officials. So despite Merz's domestic troubles, despite his collapsing approval ratings, he's still playing the role of statesman abroad. But the question is whether any of this international diplomacy will help him at home, where the public has clearly lost faith. And while we're talking about European leaders making bold statements, let's discuss what Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban announced yesterday. Orban declared that the result of parliamentary elections in his country next year will determine whether Hungary goes to war. If there's a government supported by Brussels, he says, it will drag Hungary into conflict. But if there's a national government, there's a chance to avoid it. This is an extraordinary claim. Orban is essentially telling Hungarian voters that a vote for Brussels-aligned parties is a vote for war, while a vote for him is a vote for peace. It's a stark binary choice, and it's designed to mobilize his base by playing on fears of being pulled into a larger conflict. Whether you agree with Orban or not, you have to admit this is a powerful political message in a region still deeply affected by the war in Ukraine. Now let's cross the Atlantic, because the reaction in the United States to the fine imposed by the European Union on Elon Musk's social platform X is intensifying like never before. Just to remind everyone, the escalation between the EU and the US started after the European Commission fined X €120 million for failing to comply with EU rules. US Vice President J.D. Vance reminded everyone about what he called blackmail from the European Commission. In his post, Vance recalled how the European Commission offered X an illegal secret deal. If X quietly implemented censorship without telling anyone, the Commission wouldn't fine the platform. Other platforms accepted this deal, but X did not. Elon Musk wrote about this back in 2024, and now the Vice President of the United States is confirming it publicly. Vance made it clear how things work at the European Commission. To some people, they talk about democracy, while to others, they quietly offer censorship. Think about what that means. The same institution that lectures the world about democratic values is allegedly making backroom deals to suppress speech. That's not just hypocrisy, that's institutional corruption dressed up as regulation. But the most unexpected development for the European Commission was when X blocked the Commission's advertising account. Yes, you heard that correctly. The European Commission was placing ads on X. To make the ads reach more people, they used a very clever trick, making links look like videos. In reality, this method is also considered a violation of European Union transparency rules, because advertising should be honest and clear without hidden tricks. According to the European Commission's own standards, they fined Musk's platform for similar deception. And now, in response, Musk's social network has blocked the European Commission's advertising account. The European Commission can no longer manage its advertising through X's panel. The head of products at Musk's social network wrote a short message, "Your advertising account has been deleted, period." So the conflict is escalating even further. The European Union punished X for violating the rules, and X responded by depriving the European Commission of the ability to place ads on its platform. In Washington, they also considered the huge fine a political move. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio called it an attack by foreign governments on American technology platforms and the American people. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau went even further. On X, he announced that Europe is undermining U.S. policy while simultaneously demanding military protection from Washington. How can that be? Quite a few American politicians, including Federal Communications Commission Chairman Brendan Carr, also supported Musk, accusing the European Union leadership of intentional discrimination against American companies. Donald Trump's advisor David Sachs specifically emphasized, "Europe must protect freedom of speech, otherwise we will not protect Europe." That's a direct threat. That's Washington telling Brussels that if you're going to censor American companies, don't expect American soldiers to defend you. It's an incredibly blunt message, and it shows how serious this conflict has become. The European Commission predictably rejects all accusations and insists that the decision was made to protect users from fraud and disinformation, but notably, they're staying silent about the alleged blackmail of social platforms a year ago. That silence speaks volumes. And while we're discussing transatlantic tensions, there's another bombshell. The CEO of JP Morgan, the largest bank in the United States, Jamie Dimon, called Europe a weak continent and stated that it represents a serious economic risk to the United States. The head of America's biggest bank is openly saying that Europe is a liability. Dimon notes that some European leaders recognize the existing problems, but he emphasizes that difficulties in reaching consensus within the European Union itself threaten the entire continent. He also separately praised Donald Trump for efforts to reduce bureaucracy in the government apparatus. This statement comes, please note, from someone who was close to American Democrats. So when even people from the Democratic side of the aisle are praising Trump's deregulation efforts and calling Europe weak, that tells you something fundamental has shifted. But wait, there's more happening in the United States. Uncle Bill is back in action, and Africa is on the agenda again. As Uncle Bill announced, African farmers will receive AI-based consultants, as well as better seeds and animal genetics, which will allow them to become significant food exporters. So Africa is about to change, and Uncle Bill Gates is more interested than ever before. Whenever Gates turns his attention somewhere, it's worth asking what the real agenda is, because his interventions tend to reshape entire sectors. Now let's head across the ocean to Great Britain, because something unusual happened yesterday at the Tower of London Museum. 4 members of a protest group with a very interesting name, Take Back Power, were arrested after an incident involving the crown jewels. They threw food at the display case protecting the crown jewels. One protester took out a tray of apple pie and threw it at the case protecting the crown of the British Empire. Then another protester poured bright yellow cream on the display. The protesters were shouting, "Democracy is broken. We came here to the nation's treasures to take back power." That's what they said. London police report that 4 people were arrested on suspicion of causing damage as part of the investigation. Activists from Take Back Power call themselves a new civil resistance group and are loudly demanding the creation of a citizens' assembly that should tax the super rich. These are protest sentiments openly manifesting in British society. Open displays of dissatisfaction with inequality and demands to make the super wealthy pay. This is a very serious challenge. So we're seeing protests targeting symbols of monarchy and wealth. We're seeing calls for taxing the ultra-rich. We're seeing direct action that gets people arrested. This isn't just vandalism. This is political theater designed to send a message. The question is whether these movements will grow or fade away, and what the British establishment will do in response. So let me bring this all together for you. We've got the European Greens turning against their own allies because climate policy isn't extreme enough. We've got EU countries unable to agree on how to handle migration. We've got Belgium facing a crisis of corruption and criminal infiltration that threatens the entire EU. Friedrich Merz in Germany is facing record disapproval, and his citizens are so angry they're getting arrested for insulting politicians. The EU fined Elon Musk's platform, and now Washington is threatening to withdraw military protection from Europe. Jamie Dimon is calling Europe weak and economically risky, and protesters in London are throwing food at the crown jewels to demand taxing the rich. What ties all of this together? Institutional failure. Political systems that no longer represent the people they're supposed to serve. Elites making decisions that ordinary citizens reject. And transatlantic relationships fracturing in ways we haven't seen in decades. This isn't just about individual news stories. This is about the architecture of Western power coming under enormous strain. And I believe you're going to hear a lot more important developments from me first. These are the information moments for today, for right now, and they say a great deal. Make sure to write your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what you think about everything that's happening and everything I've said here. I want to hear from you. And remember, if this kind of independent analysis matters to you, hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and please consider sponsoring us. We're doing this work without corporate backing, and your support makes all the difference. I wish you a peaceful sky. That's the most important thing. Until tomorrow, and may the news always be good. All the best to you. Before we close this chapter today, I want to take a moment to speak directly to you, not as a commentator, but as a partner in this search for the truth. We have just walked through a minefield of geopolitical agendas, hidden deals, and media spin. Uncovering these stories, stripping away the layers of corporate deception to find the raw, verified facts, is not easy. In an era where fake news travels faster than the truth, rigorous fact-checking is an exhausting, round-the-clock commitment. But it is a labor of love, because I believe you deserve to know what is really happening, not just what the powers that be want you to think. That is why I'm asking for your help. This channel is fiercely independent, which means we answer only to you, not to shareholders or political parties. If you value this honesty and the hard work that goes into every single episode, please hit that like button and subscribe. It sends a powerful message. And if you are in a position to do so, I warmly invite you to consider sponsoring the channel. Your financial support is the only thing that allows us to stay independent, keep the lights on, and continue this difficult work. It is not just a donation, it is a partnership in the fight for reality. We are in this together, and I cannot thank you enough for standing by my side.